So yesterday we were doing these three verses about dhriti. Dhriti is patience or resolve or your staying power, whichever way. Dharayate aneneti dhriti. So it could be, we interpret it as sometimes patience, sometimes as your resolve, sometimes as your willpower, depending on the context in which. And then he sort of divided that into three categories. The one where the resolve is not linked to any specific limited purpose, but that particular thing is guided by a moral imperative. Like in case of Immanuel Kant, there's something called, he says, categorical imperative. You have certain moral principles and you want to act accordingly. There is a notion of dharma, you want to act accordingly. In Buddhism also, they have this concept of dharma. When you are guided by this particular thing, that is called sattvika. Dritya yaya dharayate mana pranindriya kriyaha yogena avyavicarinya, without any exception. Dhritihi sa partha sattviki. So first thing is continuous. Second, it's not sporadic, it's not linked to any particular activity, it's not instrumental. Third, it's guided by a certain understanding of our place in the universe, so it's very holistic, it's integrated. Then the Rajasika one is same resolve, not a bad thing, except that it is linked to specific goals in life, like an examination, building a house, making some money, becoming famous, winning an election, anything, or raising a garden, anything, and then you need resolve to do it. But this one is more functional, it's more instrumental or utilitarian. That sort of resolve, which link to specific goals, it's also possible to interpret that even if you have a very overall good resolve to lead a very ethical life, to do small everyday life duties or activities, you would still need plans and you need resolve. But when these individual resolves or strategy, plans of action, and then you have some goals you have set for yourself, are guided by a larger overall goal at the background, that one is considered to be sattvic. In the absence of that overarching guiding principle at the back of your mind, which informs and pervades each of your activities, that will become rajasic. That is the basic difference. And tamasic is the reverse of all this, that this person also has a resolve not to change, not to improve, not to do anything good. He's like the pig who loves to be in that kitchen or mud, he loves, releases that mud and he plays and stays there in the garbage yard. Okay. And yaya swapnam bhayam shokam vishadam madam evacha na vimunchati durmedhaha. That particular thing. So his negative thinking, his bad, his loss of memory, his inability to remember what is right in life, it continues. He's able to hold on to it. Dhriti sa partha tamasi. Actually, there is no resolve. It's actually a state of obduracy, a kind of inertia of rest, and inertia of all negative qualities. And they have a very powerful grip over our mind. And it's like a form of addiction. It's like inability to change, because change requires some kind of an adventure, some kind of and then you need God's grace, and these things help, because the biggest challenge in life is in fact to get out of our comfort zones. So this tamasic dhriti or resolve or patience or whatever you call it is all about languishing in the zone of comfort. That is what is that kind of dharya is all about. So he can take a bit of humiliation, bit of hardship, but he doesn't want to change. He would like to continue to stick to that. You see a person, come whatever may, he's not going to change. That kind of resolve or patience or that continuity is what is tamasic. Now, Bhagavan says in the next verse, he'll now tell that we did these sadhanas, with this kriya and a karaka and a jnana and a parigyanta, we discuss all that as sattvika, rajasika, and tamasika. Accordingly, the results of the sadhanas that we do can also be mentioned as sattvika, rajasika, and tamasika. And what is that? About sukha. So that also is defining. Sukham tvidanim trividham srunumi bharatar sabha abhyasad ramate yatra Dukkhantam cha nigacchati. Actually, these two verses should be read together because a bit of the sattvika thing coming in the last half of the sentence. Abhyasad ramate yatra dukhantam na nigacchati yattat agrivishamiva pariname mritopamam tat sukam satvikam prokta matma buddhi prasadajam. So these two will do it together. Only the first line is the introduction. Sukham tu idani. That sukha also, which is the result of whatever you do, is also of three types, three vidham. Shrunu me. Listen it from me, O Bharatarshabha, because you can digest it. You are a great guy. He's trying to sort of, you know, he's trying to please him, hold his attention. Like the mother tells the child often, Bhagavan Krishna here behaves almost like a very caring mother to Arjuna. So, parents, when they're feeding their children, they know the children are very mischievous. They say, "You're the best boy in the town. Do you know that?" The boy is very happy and continues to consume food, doesn't oppose. So he's bribed with a lot of adulation. And Bhagavan is bribing Arjuna, means all of us, because we are very egoistic, we're very ignorant. So he is now, because talking about Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, he knows when he says you are the bravest one, we should be in a position to evaluate ourselves because we have already studied all that. Then, what is that Sattvika Sukha? He first mentions in the last half of the verse number 36. Abhyasat ramate yatra dukkhantam cha nigacchati. So, first thing, you are not immediately going to enjoy it. You have to develop a taste for it, and then you will enjoy it. It's like doing these Bhagavad Gita classes. So obviously, you have to actually find time and always be punctual, and then you're listening to it. But then you feel good that, okay, I have listened to something. But it's only because of the abhyasa. I mean, we had about 25 people listening to it in the beginning, isn't it? A lot of people dropped off. So what happens is that in everything in life that we do, wherever we actually exert ourselves, and this particular thing, this word abhyasa, is actually following the discussion on dhriti, resolve, patience, ability to sustain one's efforts. Therefore, it makes great sense to put that abhyasad ramati yatra, where in that sukha, yatra sukhe, and then dukkhandam cha nigacchati, and also one reaches the end of his problems, because somewhere Bhagavan is saying half the problems we see as obstructions have more to do with our inability to exert ourselves and practice it. It could be like they say in the traditional parlance something called asana suddhi, that you must develop a habit of sitting in lotus posture in sukhasana for some time. You start with 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and the knees will ache and the legs will pain. But then after 5 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, you are used to it. The body accepts it. And it's very clear if you have ever gone for these. I haven't, but I know what happens there. I've done it in the traditional way, art thing, that they sit for 100 hours, like almost 10 days course, the Goenka ones, the Vipassana. So first 2 3 days, I've talked to a lot of people. The whole body revolves, and it's impossible to be there. And then one person who did it very faithfully, she was narrating it to me, that how on the seventh day, when she had planned to just leave it and go away, body was aching. The Guru told her, "This is happening to you essentially because of all the tamas and all the negativities are sort of fighting with you to pull you down. Learn to let go." And she was saying that on the seventh day, I was almost to leave that course. It was so painful. I just relieved myself. I let go, surrendered to that pain. And then after 10 minutes, there was no pain, absolutely. So he's saying that abhyasadramate yatra, that is that moment. It happens, but only after punarabritti abhyasa. Again and again you do it, and the body sort of learns the intrinsic value of something beginning. And then he sort of elaborates that point in the next verse. Yat yat sukham tat agre visham eva. It's like poison because we don't like it. Somebody says you have to get up at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock, or you do this, or take food only after taking a bath. I mean, these are difficult things. Vishamiva pariname, however, in terms of what they give us, the ills in the form of good or bad experiences, amrutopamam. Amrutopamam means they're comparable with amritam. Okay? Now, that's almost comparable to something like nectar like. That means something which all we should aspire for, the most desirable, priceless. That happiness is priceless. Tat sukham, that happiness is satvikam. That is what is sattvika sukha prokta. And that is what is means. Atma buddhi prasadajam. That sukha is not coming out of the fact that you are having an ice cream, you love the taste, and you're saying, wow, it's yummy. That sukha is not sattvika. It's born experience. So sattvika sukha is not born out of sense experience. It's born out of atma buddhi, self-realization. And there's a great inner feeling. I mean, you must have felt it some days that you pass through a very difficult time, but you didn't compromise, and that time went. And when you look back, you didn't like that hardship that you passed through, but you feel very proud that I could actually manage to hold on to myself and not compromise and stick to my morality. You feel great happiness, yeah, especially when you help somebody who's in pain or something. You might lose your time and money, but at the end of the day, you feel very good. And that is not out of any sense experience, but out of a very inner satisfaction that you are able to undergo a bit of unpleasant sense experience to be able to experience, which is much more subtle, and something is elevating in nature, which elevate your feeling of who you are, and you see inside the best part. Sometimes you cannot put them in words. You just feel very light. One fine morning, you might wake up very early, then you did meditation, you had to do some work, or you had to write something, and then on a Sunday, for example, you did all that, and by 9:30, 10, when people are waking up from bed, you are already having maybe your second cup of tea after doing a lot of work and morning walk and stuff like that, and gardening, and you're helping children, done everything. So you're having a cup of tea after breakfast, everything. You just relaxed, and then you feel a kind of lightness within yourself, which cannot be expressed as linked to or born out of a particular sense experience, whether the gardening, whether it was the walk, whether it was the time you spent with your children. You cannot explain that. It just happens. That, he says, is kind of a very sattvic thing. Okay, so first let's look at the commentary. So first, what does he say? Guna bhedana kriyayam karakanam cha tridha bheda ukta atha idanim phalasya cha sukhasya tridha bheda uchyate. We have already discussed earlier that the kriyas and karakas, the activities and the causes thereof, I mean the kartas, whosoever. So tridha bheda, and there are three types. Ukta, atha, idanim, and now in this particular prasanga, in this particular verse, phalasya cha sukhasya, and because you have that kriya and karaka, they have some results, and which we are discussing here, that is of three types. Sukhamiti. Sukham to idanim trividam shrunu. Please listen to me. Samadhanam kuru. Please focus on it, concentrate. Iti etaname mama bharatarsava. And this is my conclusion. You please pay attention to it. Abhyasat paricharyat abrite ramate ratim pratipadyate yatra. Where a person who is doing abhyasa is again and again repeating it, practicing it, Parichayad abritehe, and then he sort of does it. He familiarizes himself, he gets into it and owns it up, Ramate, and then he enjoys it. Ratim pratipadyate, feeling is an element of love in it. Yatra, yasmina, sukhanubhave, in that experience of happiness, he experiences that love for it. He develops a taste for it. Dukhantamja, dukha avasanam. Dukhanta means end of his misery. What is end of misery? There are two ways to look at it. Sukha can be seen as end of misery, and the other way, when you are experiencing a sense of happiness, it's very obvious that the pain which distracted you, pulled you down, is absent at that moment. Okay. Dukkhavasanam, dukkha upasamam cha nigachati, nishchayena prapnoti. Nigachati means definitely he reaches there. Then in the next verse he says, Yat iti. Yat tat sukham agri purvam. Agri means before. Purvam. Prathama sannipate. First time when you connect through your indriyas with particular something. Okay, when you start doing it. Sannipate. Jnana vairagya dhyana samadhi arabhya iti atyanta ayasa purvakatvad vishamiva. So he wants to do that spiritual practice. And in the beginning, how does it feel? Prathama Sannipade, when he starts it, Jnana Vairagya, he has to do all that, right? He has to study the Upanishads, he has to practice Abhyasa Vairagya, Bhyam, Tannirodhaha, then Dhyana he will do, and Samadhi. All this, iti atyanta ayasa purvakatvad. It's parishrama sapekya. It involves a lot of hard work, a lot of self-denial, and therefore, Visham eva, that tastes as if it's poison. What does that mean? Dukham eva means dukkhatmakam bhavati. That tastes as if it's poison. Pariname, however, in result, jnana vairagyadi paripakajam. Then jnana and vairagya, understanding, tattva darsana, as well as your vairagya, that detachment, paripakajam, when it matures. In one day we don't understand. We do jnana sadhana, jnana vyasa, what we are doing. After years of the sadhana, we have an inner feeling that we have more or less made sense of this Vedanta thing. And then Vairagya also matures. So you're not somebody very finicky about not talking to others or avoiding, but you have that, become a kind of a person with a bit of equanimity. You're able to talk to people without getting involved in a lot of things. Sukham amrutopamam. So it now tastes like that sukha, that happiness. It emerges out of this maturity. It's a very slow and steady process. And then Bhagavan says earlier in the in the chapter number 6, he has said, Sanei Sanei Ruparamet. Slowly and slowly you try to withdraw. So when that matures, you enjoy this happiness. Tas Sukham Satvikam Proktam. That is what is referred to as Satvika. By whom? Vidvadvihi. By all the people who have mastered the spiritual sciences. Atmanaha buddhi atma buddhi. That what is atma buddhi prasadajam, born out of self-awareness, self-understanding. What is atma buddhi is explaining? Atma ka buddhi or atma vishaya ka buddhi. So this understanding about atma, that understanding. Atma buddhi means self-realization. Buddhi atma buddhi prasada. Nirmalyam. Okay, that purity of it. Salilavat swachhata tataha, that is the best part of it, when the self-awareness or knowledge becomes very transparent. Tataha jatam, then this is born, atma buddhi prasadajam atma vishayava. This atma buddhi is again adding, you can also say I atmana buddhi, then actually there is a bit of apprehension about duality. Atma ka buddhi, the do cheez ho gaya na, atma or buddhi. Somebody might say that you are accepting Dvaita. That's why he's saying Atma Vishayava, meditation on the Atma. Atma Alambanaba, or Atma is the foundation on which it's kind of the soul buddhi is relying on that presence. So it's very much self aware that I have a mind, I'm thinking, end of the day, it's only Atma. I don't exist. What I think I exist is different from that subtle self, is all an appearance and a phenomenal thing. The inner thing is actually true, the outer thing is just a manifestation. If he starts thinking like this, va buddhi atma buddhi tat prasada prakashadva, when that becomes good, it excels, it becomes, it fructifies, it blossoms. Jatam ititat tasmat satvika, and therefore that is called satvika buddhi. More or less, Madhusudana Saraswati more or less the same thing. But there's one sentence which is interesting there, and we'll look at it. Bhagavan says here, Evam kriyanam karanam cha gunatah traividyam ukta tatphalasya sukhasya traividyam pratijanite slokarthena. The half of the verse number 36. Me mama vachanat sunu. This part is interesting and is. Me mama vachanat sunu. Mere baat ko suno. Heopadeya vivekartham. Why is he talking about these three types of sukhas? every way Madhusudana Saraswati is very elder brotherly affection for the students, saying that never think that Bhagavan is wasting a lot of time telling us the presence of different types of sukhas and dhritis and all that. No, he is very purposeful. We need to develop that here upadhyaya jnana. Wherever the sattvika world comes, we should try to reach there. If we think by definition what we are experiencing is tamasika thing, then we graduate to that sattvika avastha through the rajasika. You cannot jump there. The lazy guy cannot have a sattvika dhriti. He has to practice and achieve few things. Maybe he should do a few hours of gardening, come out of his lethargy, his that slothfulness. Do a bit of physical exercise. Go play, run, and then maybe the blood circulation improves. He feels much more energetic. Then after some days, he can take up a job and do everything right. And then he should also do, the Sravana Manana and the Dhyasana as part of his daily, this routine that is following. That's a long way off. It cannot happen on the first day. So whenever you are giving advice also, this also would help you give guidance to whosoever, your juniors, your children or nephews or whosoever. You think there are some issues in the light of Bhagavad Gita, you can give some advice. Why don't you do it? Don't tell him that Bhagavad Gita says this, then he'll run away. But you can just say, why don't you just maybe do a bit of cycling? And will that solve my depression? No, I'm just saying, why don't you do it for a while, then we can talk. Actually, slowly, when the energy level goes up, his depression will subside. And then he'll be ready for a more fruitful discussion as to what he wants to achieve and why he felt depressed. So these chapters 16, 17, 18, very useful tools. And they including 15, 14, 15, all these are very useful chapters in terms of how we deal with our lives and how we try to help other people around us. Okay, then Bhagavan says, Me mama vachana shrunu hiopadaya vivekartham. Okay, vyasangantara nivaranena manastiri guru. Try to focus your mind because you may have a lot of distractions. Vyasanga. Asanga is attachment. Vyasanga is different kinds of attachments. Antara, Vyasangadara nivarena. So mind is jumping from one particular attachment to another, a lot of thoughtfulness. So put an end to it. Manastiri Guru. He Bharata Sarva iti yogyata darshita. I think you can concentrate your mind. It's been a long lecture that I've been giving. It's chapter 18 already. So try to understand about what is Sattvika Sukha. And there is also a hidden purpose as to why Bhagavan is mentioning it here. Because he's already going to mention later on, and he has mentioned that in chapter 11, if you remember, that you become a nimitta, enjoy Swarga Sukha and Rajya Sukha, because all of them have already died. And I've shown to you the past and future of everything that I am. All this is imagined in me. So now Bhagavan is mentioning that happiness or peace that you're looking for during your Vishada Yoga. And we have to accept that there's a bit of Visada Yoga is essentially that Atma Anusandhana Atmaka. And we should not feel bad when you have a mild depression or a bit of, you have blues. No, these are very good signs that you have started asking questions to ourselves. That's why you feel a little uncomfortable with life. Otherwise, a lot of people are very happy with their parties and ice creams and drinks and other activities that they do. Those people who are a little unhappy, they already have the possibility of knowing who they are. So Bhagavan now is saying, yes, you have done a good job by listening to all this, but listen also to the Sattvika Sukham. It's coming after some time. So it doesn't come very easily. If you think that, with my blessings, you're going to get happiness or anything, no, it requires a lot of hard work. Bhagavan himself is the proof of what he advised to Arjuna. And therefore he says, Satvikam Sukham aha sardhena haf abhyasat yatra samadhi sukha sukhe abhyasad ati parishayad ramate paritripto bhavati. Ramate means he becomes satisfied. Natu vishaya sukha eva sadhya eva yasmin ramanascha. Okay, now ramamanascha dukhasya sarvasya api antam avasanam nitaram gachati nato vishay sukham eva ante mahat dukham. Now, he's distinguishing between the Sattvika Sukha, which is very interesting, that Dukhantam. In case of the material experiences of pleasure or happiness, it's always followed by some sort of a withdrawal, some sort of a grief, some sort of pain. You can watch it yourself. Uh, there is a sense of loss. And the more you exert yourself, the more exhausted and fatigued and tired. And it's not about physical thing, it's all mental thing. The mind sort of becomes more depressed ultimately. Because it's like that Prozac tablet a lot of people take in the West when they are feeling a little depressed. It brings back the depression because that issues have not been understood. They have not been resolved. You're just running away from it. Okay, so it's like that Botox injection on the body to make you look younger. They don't solve anything. They are not based on inner understanding of reality. They're based on self-denial, a brave face that you want to deny to yourself that there is an issue. You're just trying to cover it up with certain other things. You're managing it. So he's saying that in case of Vishaya Sukha, there is hidden dukkha there. There will be some problem or the other. But this here, the Sattvika Sukha, there is no, because it's not Vishaya Sukha, that it becomes Dukkhanta, Dukkhavasana. Why? It's not carrying seeds of sadness. I mean, you have these great people get married, and there's so much of social media stuff, and TVs are always there to chase these celebrities, and sometimes they make money now. Then what happens? You see a tweet after a few years. We have resolved to separate with a lot of friendly attitude. Please give our privacy a chance and don't disturb us. It's all gone. A lot of very speedily executed engineering of happiness has a sad end. And therefore, he's saying that dukkha vasanam in sattvika sukha. Tadeva vibrinoti yad agre jnana vairagya dhyana samadhya. Same thing he's saying. It's nothing. I'm just saying parame jnana vairagya di paripake. Same thing. So amritopamam priti atisayaspadam. It becomes that more atma vishaya buddhi atma buddhi. No, that's more or less same. There's nothing. Now, न तो राजसमिव विषय इंद्रिय संयोगजम न वा तामसमिव निद्रा आलस्यादिजम ईदृशम यद अनात्म बुद्धि निवृत्ति आत्म बुद्धि प्रसादजम समाधि सुखम तस्मात् तत्सात्विकम प्रोक्त योग योगिभिः विद्वद्भिः. Okay, the last sentence perhaps is a little different. Apare aha abhyasad आवृत्तिर्तरमते प्रियते यत्र च दुःखावभासम् अवसानं प्राप्नोति तत्सुखं तच्च त्रिविधं गुणभेदन शृणु इति तत्पद अध्याहारेण पूर्वस्य श्लोकस्य अन्वयः यद् तद् अग्रे इत्यादि श्लोकेन तु सात्विक सुख लक्षणम् इति. Okay, I mean, this is an academic point, and the last part he's making that, if you look at that verse number 36, a lot of, including Sankaracharya and Madhusudana Saraswati, they think the last part, the second half of it, is part of the discussion on Sattvika Sukha. They're saying, no, that is not the whole thing. The Sattvika Sukha is actually in 37, it's not in 36. And rest of it is more or less, and there's no new message, there's no takeaway point. So let's look at what is the Rajasika Sukha now. विषयेन्द्रिय संयोगात् यत्यत् अग्रे अमृतोपमं परिणामे विषमीव तत्सुखं राजसं स्मृतं विषय इंद्रिय संयोगात्. You have the nose and you have beautiful fragrance of sandalwood oil or a rose or orchid. Vishay indriya sanyogat yat tad agre amruta pamam. So it is instantly you are extremely happy because somebody serves you your favorite tea, whether it is jasmine tree or all gay tree, it's on your table. When it comes, you feel elated. And then you taste it, but it's very temporary. You cannot continue to have the tea for the whole day. And even if you take 3-4 cups, then you will develop a taste for it. So not sattvika, but then that particular thing, immediately it feels very good. Pariname visamiva. And then at the end of the day, it's like poison. Okay? Tat sukham rajasam smritam. Why should it be actually like poison in the end? Somebody might ask that question. It's a very pertinent question. Let's see how they answer it. And that's there. There's a bit of a academic discussion on that point, and that point starts like this. विषय इति विषये विषय इंद्रिय संयोगाद यत् तत्सुखम jayate. That happiness or that experience of happiness or pleasure, largely here it is pleasure, yat pleasure jayate, agre means prathama kshane, instantly, the moment there is the sense connects with its object, you feel good. Prathama kshane jayate, prathama kshane, amrutopamam, amrita samam, as if it's very good. It's nectar, it's the most desirable. Pariname vishamiva, when the end result, it's not very good. Valavirya rupa pragya medha dhana utsaha hani hetutvad adharma tad janita narakari hetutvacha pariname tad upabhoga viparinamante Bisham eva tasukam rajasam smitam. So he made a very powerful sentence here. We'll unravel, we'll break it into parts and make sense of it. First, in the Anandagiritika, I'm just going there because he's making sense of each and every of the words mentioned here. Bishaya indriya sanyoga yat tat sukham. That sukha is rajasika sukha. Let's go further down to make sense of what he's trying to say here. Bishamiva, and then he's saying, you see, because all these things like vala, this particular sukha is going to reduce it in the end. Your vala, so if it is dhana bala, virya, then rya, medha, dhana, usaha. This sukha is going to reduce all that. First, what are these words all about? Let's look at Anandagiri. He's defining each of these words. Balam, sanghata samarthyam, like your physical power. Now, if you, whatever gives you pleasure, so it's whether it is games or it's food or, whatever, desserts or anything, or drinks or anything. If you do too much of it, what happens to that system? It loses or gains strength. It loses strength. Viryam parakramakritam yasaha, that you get a lot of fame and a lot of adulation from others. You're a very well-known person because of the ability that you have. But then you indulge too much pleasures, there's that particular fame gets affected, that reputation is affected. Third, rupam, sarira saundaryam. If a person does too much of exercise or drinks too much or takes a lot of spicy food, anything, any pleasure, if you do too much of it, that ojas, that radiance of your body, it pales, it fades. Pragyan. What is pragyan? That wisdom that did that just, oh no, that is another text. Pragya sutartha grahana samarthyam. Pragya is, that wisdom, whatever is told to you, you're being able to make sense of it. So it's your cognitive ability. What happens if you do substance abuse or you take anything you do too much? Even if you study too much, if you exert too much, it can get affected. Pragya, okay. Then medha. Grihitarthasya abhismaranena dharana sakti. Without forgetting, you are being able to hold it. So you are able to store it, and then you can recover it, retrieve it, and just share it with anyone at any time. That is your memory. Dhanam gohiranyadi. It could be, in the traditional setting, it's about cows and goats. Now it could be land and shares and debentures and anything. Utsahasto karyam prati upakramadi. So utsaha is what sort of that initial energy that you exert to do anything. That is utsaha, enthusiasm. Ete sam nasakatvada. This vaishayika sukha causes a decline in all these things. Even if you love coffee, even if you love doing something, if you do too much of it, the enthusiasm for it dips. They're counterproductive. So in economics, they study this, right? The law of diminishing utility. The same thing, if you taste it again and again, you don't like it anymore. Nasakatvad vaisayikam sukham bisham bishasamam ityartha. Therefore, it's like poison. Tatra eva hetvantaramaha adharmeti. Then we'll go back to Sankara Bhashya because this is Ananda. And he's saying what? And then adharma janita narakadi hetutvacha, because in too much of excitement or enthusiasm, the craving for pleasure might drive a person to undertake unethical ways or means to reach that experience of pleasure. He might steal, he might tell lies, he might do all kinds of things, right? A lot of big CEOs get trapped because they have violated the laws. Why? Because they wanted more money. So all kinds of then narakadi hetutva. So adharma janita narakadi hetutva. So narakadi dukkha hetutva. So they may be in hell. So forget hell. They will be in problem even in this life. Okay, pariname tad upabhoga viparinama ante. So when that matures, that experience is over, what is awaiting you? Bad news awaiting you in some form or the other. Bisam eva tasukam rajasam smitam. So Madhusudana, there is nothing new, and therefore, okay, he's saying Vishayanam Indriyam cha sanyogat jatam. Vishaya and Indriya, when they connect, whatever is born out of it, that particular pleasure, Natu Atma Buddhi Prasada, not because of self understanding or self realization, yat tad ati prasiddham srak chandana banita sangadi sukham agre. Now, what is this happiness? He's saying srak. Somebody gives you a garland, chandana, perfumes, vanita sanga, company of beautiful girls, adi sukham agre, in the beginning, prathama arambe manaha, sayamadi klesa bhavat. To do these things, you don't need sayama, vairagya, that are, just sukham, that, you do a lot of abhyasa, you don't need it. To sit next to a beautiful girl and have a cup of coffee, you don't need any abhyasa. So it's klesa bhavat, amrutapamam, you feel very good. And Einstein said that. Parinametu ahika parathrika dukkha avahatwar bisham eva tasukam rajasam smitham. At the end of the day, you do a lot of sinning. And he's bringing it into a religious context, but even otherwise, right? You might go with a very beautiful woman for lunch. End of the day, when you come back, you look at your purse, you have spent a lot of money out of false enthusiasm. Okay? Um, I think there was this English movie where these two guys, the famous guys, I mean, it's a comedy movie, I'm forgetting, it's this scoundrel or something, where they both are cheating a lot of people, and at the end of the day, they're cheated by another girl. I'm forgetting the name. A very famous Hollywood movie. Okay, okay, now let's go to the verse number 39, which is about the tamasika dukkha. Yadagre chanubandhe cha sukham mohanamatmanaha nidralasya pramodottham tattam asamridahritam. Yad agre, arambhakala mein, in the beginning. Cha anubandhe, also later on. Cha sukham, that sukha which is in the beginning and in the end. The Rajasika Sukha is like Amrita, is very pleasant in the beginning and saddening in the end. Sattvika Sukha, painful in the beginning and very pleasing and very satisfying in the end. But this particular thing, Tamasika Sukha, is Vilakshana, different from the Sattvika and Rajasika. In the beginning and the end, it has only one quality. What is that? He's saying Sukha Mohanam Atmanaha. It can only blind your sense of who you are. That means it continues, it wraps you up with a blanket of ignorance and false understanding. So it's completely flawed. At least the Rajasiga guy is experiencing, he knows he's spending some money, he's going on a holiday, he's bought a ticket to go to Hawaii and have a holiday, or goes to Himalayas, have a holiday. If he's doing Rajasiga, not a problem. But he at least is in the real world. But this guy is an imaginary world of happiness because there is no reason to be happy, but he's happy. How? By deluding himself. Mohanam Atmanaha. And then how does he manage? How does he manage this? Nidra, Alasya, Pramoda, Uttam. So it's born out of these three, four beautiful friends of the Sukha. What are they? Nidra, slothfulness, is sleepy. Alasya, laziness. Pramada, always thinking opposite. Whenever there is reason to act, he will not act. So pramada uttam, born out of these three things, tat tamasam udatitam. So, there's the Rajasika guy early morning with his friends, and they have a plan, they're going to have a party. So they manage to get some money, and they're driving, and they'll go, and there's some environmental retreat. So they're planning to go have fun and come back. Maybe they'll spend a lot of money, maybe there'll be some problem. Rajasika, not a problem. Then the other guy gets up and he cycles and he goes to a lonely place where he's planning to do some asana, a bit of meditation, and visit a temple or a church or whatever. Sattviga guy. The third guy doesn't get up from bed. What he says, what is the point? Go to a temple unnecessarily, it's a lovely morning, sleep nicely. So he sleeps, wakes up late, takes a cup of tea late, everything. That guy is actually craving for tamasiko sukha. He doesn't have to pay for it. All of us by nature that is what we have to accept. So you graduate out of this craving for tamasika sukha by being rajasika, and then twist it a little by being atmabhimukhi. Then it'll be a little change in the approach, a bit of hardship in the beginning, but then great amount of satisfaction in the end. Like you feel great. You remember as children when we're doing maths and all, there are some hard sections we have ignored it and you sit and you resolve them. You feel really great that I have done so many problems today, isn't it? In school days. That is Sattvic Sukha. So in the commentary, what Bhagavan says, Sankaracharya, Yat Agrecha iti, Yat Agrecha Anuvandhe, Cha Avasana Uttarakale. So in the beginning and also in the end, Sukha Mohanam, Mohakaram Atmanaha, which sort of deludes you. Nidra alasya pramodham. So nidra cha alasyam cha pramadasya iti etebhyah samutisthati iti nidra alasya pramodatham. It's born out of, it emerges out of these negative qualities of, nidra, sleep, and then laziness and slothfulness, and this pramada, a kind of procrastinative mind and unable to sort of be a little more active, and all the time opposite things. Tat tamasam udahatam. And there is nothing, okay, yeah, there is one sentence which is interesting in Madhusudana Saraswati. Agre prathama arambhe cha anuvande pariname cha yat sukham atmanaha mohakaram nidralasya prasiddhi. Nidra and alasya, we just lays around and we know that it's going to benefit us, but then, yeah, if you are really tired, you need to give yourself a body a bit of rest, and it's very essential, especially if you have delivered something, you have deadlines to meet, and then after 2 3 days you want to relax, you want to take time off. It's all fine because the body needs to recharge itself, and sleep is a vital element in that regime to re-energize yourself. You need to give yourself very good rest, not only physical but also mental. That's fine. That's part of your work. But when it is done out of that laziness, that is problematic. That is what he's saying. Prasiddha pramadaha kartavya artha avadhanam antarena manorajya matram tepya. So, instead of doing something, he sort of indulges, he does manorajya. That is the pramada thing. So he will fancy something, he will do this, that, but he will not do it. Tebhya eva uttishtati, not the satvikamiva buddhi prasadasam, but it's not out of atmagyana. That is not sattvika, neither it is rajasa, that you have to do a bit of physical exercise and you are trying to experience it. Nava rajasmivam vishay indriya sanyogajam, neither he goes to do anything because he's lazing around in his room. He's doing daydreaming. Maybe he'll take some substance or watch TV and do some nonsensical thing and fantasize and kill the day lazing around. Vishayendra Sanyogajam Tana Nidra Alasya Pramodatham Tamasam Sukham Udahitam. That is what it comes to an end. Now, this is a conclusion in the verse number 40. Here, what he's trying to say is something more profound. And then he will talk about this these varnashrama and stuff like that. We have to put it in a certain context because they are contentious ideologically in today's world where there's so much of emphasis on political correctness. If you are discussing Gita, somebody might say, please tell this to me, explain this to me. So we need to pay good attention to understand it well and then present it well when we're talking to anyone. So what first he says is that there is nothing in this jagat, in this material world, in this empirical world or phenomenal world, which is not touched by these three gunas. Why? Because out of the Maya or Prakriti, what is Maya or Prakriti? That Samya Vasta of three gunas. Gunas are not born out of Maya. These three gunas, when there is no disturbance, they are, anyuna dhika avastha, neither nyuna nor adhika. Anyuna dhika avastha, that very avastha is Samya avastha, is that pradhana, Prakriti. When there is some bit of a movement there, and because of the Purusha Prakriti Sanniti in Sankhya, and in Vedanta it's all Ishvara Sankalpa, because it's all imaginary. When this particular thing becomes a little disturbed, it becomes Kriyanvita, gets activated, creates this whole thing. So every damn thing which comes out of that Maya, because Maya is nothing but these three gunas put together in a state of equal balance, and then everything comes out of it, the Karana shall remain in Karya, like the whatever is the essential nature of the milk is there in curd, in butter, in whatever, the cream, and also the purified butter and ghee. They are all dairy products. Similarly, this Maya, because these are Mati Gunatmika, is Maya. So gunas are not born out of Maya. And because if you say so, then the gunas, I mean the moment, if that particular Samyavastha is terminated, then Maya will also get terminated. So that is the Swarupa Eva. That Samyavastha per se is not Maya. They are in Samyavastha in Maya when there is no creation. So if the Samyavastha is equal to Maya, we say the Samyavastha is destroyed, means Maya is destroyed. No, Maya is undergoing transformation. It creates this whole samsara. So in this verse number 40th, he is explaining that everything in the samsara has these three aspects: sattva, tamas, and rajas. Why is he suddenly saying this? Because he has discussed that earlier. He's saying this here because he's now saying we need to locate ourselves. He has given us a long lecture on these three gunas and how they manifest in our shraddhas, in our kriyas, as kartas, whatever we do. And even jnana is of three types. This resolve or dharya, whatever we have, that is of three types. Everything is of three types. Because whatever we can associate ourselves with, whatever we undergo, is always Trigunatmika, because we are all born out of that Maya. That is the Upadana Karana, the Jagat. Upadana Karana. And the Nimitta Karana is Ishvara. That is only Sankalpa, nothing else. So this whole material reality of which we are a part. Therefore, why Bhagavan is mentioning in the 40th verse that there is nothing on earth which is not Trigunamika or is free from the influence of this, the purpose here is that he's trying to tell us that let's figure out where exactly you stand. Like in Ayurvedic, they'll look at Vata, Pitta, Kapha. They'll look at your pearls and they'll say, okay, you are the Pitta type, you're a Kapha type. The medicine is accordingly prescribed in the spiritual text as to if it's a Vata type, what kind of diseases he can have and what medicine will work on him, what medicine may not work on him. Similarly, whether we are Tamasika, predominantly Tamasika person, it's a must that he has to have a physical regimen. And all of us can know actually. So the person who by nature is a little Tamasika, that absolutely doesn't deny him an opportunity to be spiritual and to even have Atma-jnana, but he needs to immediately have a regime of a lot of physical activities, a lot of responsibilities, because the machine works better when he has a chance to work. Otherwise, there's a problem. It's like you have these big dogs and all. If you don't take them on a walk, they'll develop a lot of physical diseases. You know, and you know about that story, right? When Napoleon was taken as a prisoner, he was asked to, because he had to do a lot of physical work, so they asked him to dig, pits and then cover them up. And he was very depressed because he never lived like that. He was a highly rajasic person, and this imprisonment is essentially an imposed tamasic state of living. And that fellow slowly died of, some people say poison, but he died of depression in a way. And then this particular case, that if we are Rajasika, then how to go to Sattvika? So first we have to figure out where we stand, right? And then accordingly, Bhagavan says you have to do your own sadhana and then graduate to the next higher level, reach the Sattvika level, do Nishkama karma, and then you will develop jnana and vairagya, and more seriously, then you can look forward, having done your duties. Therefore, this verse is kind of a conclusive um, reminder to us about what sadhana we have done so far, how we are moving forward. Therefore, this verse number 40 is very important, as Sankaracharya and others are mentioning. What is the verse? न तदस्ति पृथिव्यां वा दिवि देवेषु वा पुनः सत्त्वं प्रकृतिजैर्मुक्तं यदेभिः स्यात् त्रिभिर्गुणैः न तदस्ति पृथिव्यां वा दिवि देवेषु वा पुनः. I mean, because the devatas, including Hiranyagarbha, they are all jivas. They are not Ishvara. They are Ishvara Srushta, means they are jivas of some form. They are subtle bodied, we are gross bodied. Doesn't make a difference. So, not tadasti prithivyam, either on earth or even in Divi, means in Dyuloka, in Shvarga, Dyuloka, Deve Shubha, or you go to the celestial beings, the Gandharvas, and you go to the gods, the so called gods. So many deities are there. Punaha, Sattvam, there is nothing. Va Punaha, Prakriti Jair, Muktam, Sattvam, Nasti. Not tadasti, that is not there. Yad evihi trigunihi muktam syat. It's as if it's free from these three. That's not possible. That means essentially saying whether on earth or at the astral levels or in Shwargaloka is all part of Srishti, and that is born out of Prakriti. It's born out of Prakriti means that Prakriti is actually what is the Rupa, that's Trigunatmika. There's three Rupas, the Sattva, Tama, and Rajas. So they will verily be there. So they might develop some problems. Whether you are a god, you are rich, you are poor, you are happy or sad or fair or dark. These three gunas will not let you remain free until you have done sadhana and you have gone beyond them through Atmajnana. Therefore, it's important to make sense of it. That's what is the hint here. Let's look at the commentary. We have 5 minutes. I'll be able to conclude that part here. Atha idanim prakarana upasanghartham. In order to bring this whole discussion on the three gunas to a conclusion, sloka arabhyate naiti. Na tad asti tan nasti prithvyam. Na tad asti means tan nasti. That is not there. What is that? Prithvyam va manusyadi sattvam. I mean, whether it is prithvi and whether it is human beings or God, sattvam prani jatam, anyadava aprani jatam. So either it's the human affairs that we're looking at, or something which is para-human, or it's beyond the human affairs, which in the astral planes, aprani jatam, that means divi, in the divuloka. Aprani jata means not prani jata, not born out of animals and plants and humans and etc. Devi suva punaha sattvam, or that there's that existence, that sattva is not there. Here is sattva is not that sattva, tamas, and rajas. Sattva is that ability to exist, the possibility of their existing. That is the sattva thing is talking about. Prakriti jehi prakrititaha jatehi. Prakriti means what is born out of prakriti maya, is trigunatmika maya, jatehi, evi tribhi gunihi. Because that maya is actually trigunatmika. So whole sansara is born out of these three. The sattva, tama, raja, rupa, everything you will see that there. Sattva-divihi muktam parityaktam. So that sattva, tama, rajas, nothing is free from the interplay of these three gunas. The gunas here is not like darkness and beauty and ugliness and anger, and no, not those gunas or qualities. Here, these fundamental dispositions of whatever is material or astral. Parityaktam, mukta means parityaktam, free from. Yat syad bhavet na tadasti. Whatever is possible, free from these three gunas, that is not possible, that is not there. Purvena sambandha sarvah sansaraha kriyakaraka phalalakshanaha. This whole sansara, if you look at it, what is it like? There is some kriya, some activities that in karaka, there's something, is a doer, is doing it, there's a karta, there's a process. Phala lakhyana is an outcome of that. Sattva, tama, rajo, gunatmaka. And this particular, the outcome of the interplay of the kriyas, the activities, the doers, and the means of doing them, the jnana and everything, is there of three types: sattva, rajas, or tamasika. Avidya parikalpita, and these are imagined out of false understanding, because these gunas ultimately are not real. What is real? Ekameva advityam. That's Satya, that Brahman is only real. Samula anartha ukta, that parikalpita, samula anartha. Samula means avidya mula anartha. Anartha is all the dukkhas that we suffer. Anartha mulaga. Samula anartha, with that avidya ukta, bruksha rupa kalpanaya. In chapter 15 he mentions that the mula is above, the branches are down, and how this whole sansara is there. Bruksha Rupa Kalpanaya cha Udva Moolam Ityadina. In the chapter 15, he has discussed that. Tam cha Asanga Sastrena Dridhina Chitva. Bhagavan says, how do you do it? How do you get rid of this avidya? Asanga Sastrena, the powerful weapon of complete vairagya, detachment. With attachment, you will get trapped. So you have to chop this tree off, this tree of sansara, not physically, in your mind, because all problems are there. So asanga sastrena dridhyana chitva tataha padam tat parimargitabhyam iti cha uktam. And then you're supposed, then he had a discussion in that, how to achieve self-realization. Tatraja sarvasya trigunatmakatvat. Everything in sansara, including our chest, our jnana, our shraddha, everything is trigunatmika. You cannot pick up anything which is not there. So how do we start? We have to start somewhere, right? That is mentioning here. संसार कारण निवृत्ति अनुपपत्तो, तब तो मुख्य भी नहीं हो पाएगा, सब त्रिगुणात्मिका है. आप कह रहे हैं श्रद्धा इज ऑल्सो त्रिगुणात्मिका, ध्यान इज त्रिगुणात्मिका, त्याग इज त्रिगुणात्मिका. Where is freedom from these gunas? That means anirmukhya prasanga. Mukhya is not possible. He's saying no, it's possible. Praptayam yatha tan nivritti syat tatha vaktavyam. So whatever is available, wherever you are, you have to make your movement from there only. Sarvasya gira sahasrartham upasanghartabhya etavan evacha sarvo vedaha smrityarthascha. And that is why this whole thing, he will mention that okay, the Brahmin qualities are like this, Vaishya qualities are like this. It's not referring to any person born in a specific social category, but it's all about dispositions, it's all about one's motivation. 90% of the people these days could be perhaps, sort of categorized as Vaishyas. And then if you look at the whole hospitality industry, maybe the Sudras, and how many people want to do academics? Very few. Those who want to do pure research, right? So that is the Brahmanical disposition in a way. So broadly, and everybody wants money. So-called Brahmins, they're craving after money. So Vaishya. So there's not a problem here. It's all about, Sri Aurobindo has written a beautiful thing saying that everyone has these four qualities in him: the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Because without one aspect, like the role of a mother, role of a father, that Sheva Bhava will not come if you don't have that Shudra element in you. Then you want to protect that bravery, honor. Without Kshatriya thing will not come. The orientation toward truth. Without that Brahmana won't come. So essentially, everybody has these four elements. And he has written a beautiful reflective essay on that. So that is how he's saying that Sarva Purushartha is concluded here, and from here we will carry forward tomorrow. Let's do the Santi mantras, then we will discuss about Shivratri and when to start and for the class tomorrow, if you have no questions. Okay, so I'll put an end to the YouTube.